This is Kelly.
This is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator. We're on episode 15. This is the last of our spooky, scary season. The next episode we're going to release is going to be on, I think we're going to try, instead of the first, we aim for Wednesdays. We're going to try to go for Tuesday, which will be Halloween. And that's going to be the treat. And we're going to be talking about the Green River Killer. So if you have any questions, I know I keep saying this and I've been posting it on Instagram, but please let us know because Amy is going to try to answer them. If we don't answer them for any reason on the episode, then we'll post them on our Instagram page. I have been getting some feedback from listeners, and I know everybody keeps talking about details. If there's any details that we're missing, because we are going to go back and do like a Where Are They Now episode eventually. Maybe we do it we're already on 15. So maybe we do it at 20 and I'll go back and get a little sleuthy and you can get a little sleuthy and we can figure out where some of these, or you can give me more details so I can be a little bit more sleuthy. But other than some of the like suicides that we've heard in the past, there's our last episode. I haven't had a chance to Google the whole mission trip trafficking thing since we really don't know what it is. The self-proclaimed missions trip that was in episode 14. A little bit. I've been able to Google a little bit about it and everything that pops up is like human trafficking. So it could be something like that. I do have some friends that I can ask, so I'll ask them too.
Oh, you got those friends?
I have some of those friends, so we'll ask. Not the human trafficking friends, like the friends that...
I didn't mean that.
I don't mean that they're trafficking humans. I mean, I hope none of my friends are trafficking humans. No, people who have helped with human trafficking. So maybe I'll reach out to some of them about it. But the details, are important. So if there's a certain or specific detail that you're looking for, just message us. We don't get a ton of messages. So Instagram, or you can email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com. More than happy to answer the questions. Sometimes we just start these episodes and we get sidetracked, or we don't think that maybe the color of the house is important. The only reason the color of the house would be important too is if you guys are all sleuths also. Because now you're just trying to do what I'm doing.
I'm going to tell you right now, in investigations, on my part of it, it's not. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, no, you're just looking at how the person died.
Well, ultimately, it's not going to change the cause and manner of death. So...
And the rest of us are just nosy.
Unless it's someone who's trying to identify a person who says, oh, that's so-and-so that lives over in that blue house. I mean, that's for a detective. That's not for a death investigator or a medical legal forensic doctor. So that's why.
Yeah. I do have friends too that have been listening, and we mentioned this in the past, but I do have a friend who's in the dental field, a teeth expert, and she listened to one of our episodes about, I think it was the Who Done It episode. And then after that, I got this whole text thread that was like, there's so many teeth in the human head, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, that's good to know. So maybe we have her come on and tell us about some of these things too. So we will I'm going to say episode 20, maybe we'll have everything together by then that we can start going back and reflecting on some of the past episodes. So if you guys have any questions about past episodes too, let us know.
Yeah, that would be good to get some expert opinions on that kind of stuff, because I don't know teeth very well. All I know is it's helped us identify a lot of people who were charred in some cases. And yeah, I would say that it would probably be good to ask her some questions as far as we've been talking about Jeffrey Dahmer in some cases too. And he was someone who would bite his victims as well. So maybe ask her opinion on bite marks.
So we are basically going to give you guys 3 episodes to start asking questions about past episodes. So I will post a poll on Instagram where you can ask questions. Again, you can email us, but I'll start collecting questions and I'll find the right people to answer those questions for us, because I do think that that's important and I do want to fill in some of the blanks. But yeah, at the end of the day, these cases are more about the cause of death and what you experienced not necessarily all the details that all of us sleuthy people like to hear.
Yeah. And I think, a lot of times it's like I've called it before, the CSI effect, where it's really hard for people to watch these shows that are for pure entertainment, right? Or that give you all these little details because they also have to stretch it for that hour. So, and that's another reason why I can't watch those shows. I'm like, ugh, get to the point.
Well, I am an instant gratification person. And so if there's any like loose ends, I want that gratification of knowing what happened. Or, like, again, the whodunit, where's that person now? There's a lot of things that we want to know. And I think watching these serial killer shows now, we're like, oh, so they talk about all the victims and then they talk about the murderer. And so that's just not this podcast. So we're not trying to say like we're not going to close some loose ends up, but I just don't want people to have those expectations of you either. Those are more like expectations of me. Ask me those, but I don't get a lot of information. I get the same information that everybody else gets, right? Like I'm hearing a lot of these cases for the first time also.
I will say there was an expectation on me when I was in my job that we had to attempt to try to identify these people through any means possible until it got to the point where I had to hand it off to our paleontologist type of person where they had to identify the person. So our person who was actually an expert in that field, it was like, here, you do all the hard labor first where you try to identify this person. So track down all the medical records, all the x-rays, call everyone while you're taking these calls and investigating scenes and doing all these other things. My students, I tell them, because they are now listening to this podcast, some of them don't know, they're always shocked when I tell them I make more money teaching now than what I made as a death investigator, which I actually had to have the degrees that I have to do that job. I'm making more money now than what I would have made maxed out at 7 years working for that agency, which just blows my mind. And I will continue to make more money every year teaching. So I did not get paid enough to do all the things that I was asked to do. Our job continually got more complex in trying to identify, which is part of actually this case. So you will learn all the things that I got to do for this case, which was just... it was a dream come true.
All right. So episode 15, we're calling it Body in the Lake. Let's go.
Yes. So this year in particular was especially cold. And a lot of what makes this area of my state so cold is the wind chill. So it could say outside that it's 12 degrees and the wind chill can make it feel like -10. It is miserable. Actually, in fact, I will wear my parka when it says it is 60 degrees outside. I do not care. And you know what? My athletes always make fun of me for wearing my parka while they're over there shivering. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not cold, but you are. So yeah, I am always the one wearing 3 different layers of clothing out here because wind chill is so miserable. So during this time of year, this is early March, like it had just turned into March here, and we had a lot of snow and ice. And so the ice is way worse than snow because at least the snow melts. The ice does not. It will get to be a couple inches and it's really dangerous. And during this time, especially the lakes, it's not necessarily that the water will freeze over. It's the side of the lakes that build up a lot of ice. And so the side of the lake will get a lot of moisture. And then it's like the ice just continues to build up. So it's like it will form a layer of ice and then the moisture just keeps building on top of that. And then overnight, it just continues to freeze. So it was at least a couple inches thick on the side of the lake. And just some backstory on this. At this time, there were some weird things happening around this area. They know that this is an area that there are some homeless people, which is pretty normal for this kind of area. Anytime you have a wooded area where there is like a lake nearby and it seems like it's kind of covered, you just tend to have more homeless people just because it's a place for them to kind of get some shelter. And you'll have like homeless camps, that kind of stuff. So back in February of this year, there had been a body of a woman found that was near the entrance going into this lake. So this lake is not only like a park, but it's also, you can't take it's not big enough to take like skiing boats out on, but you can take like kayaks and people do paddle boarding. Of course, not during this time of year. You can take like small little fishing boats out on it, like really small. But people will go running out there, biking, and kind of has like a trail that goes off down it.
It's not like out in the middle of nowhere then. It's where, I mean, there's people, it's active. So there's a community around it then.
Right. And actually pretty close to there. I want to say it's maybe just like a couple miles away from a small university. And so, yeah, a lot of people, like college students, will use that area for like recreational stuff. They do like the frisbee stuff out there, whatever, frisbee golf.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like a big area, but it's not like it's secluded. And so people are constantly out there. So it's odd to find a body out in the water.
Right. Well, this body that was found, it wasn't actually in the lake at the time. Not my case. We're leading up to that. This body was found like on the side of like a trail, but it was like leading into the park. And so anything like this, you're just kind of like, this is kind of weird. You would deem this as suspicious. And so they brought it in. They didn't find any trauma on the body. Of course, anything at this time, when it's that cold, I mean, people are going to have hypothermia. It's just too cold for people to be out there at night or really during the day, honestly, especially the way that they were clothed. They just didn't have enough clothing, and the wind chill, there's just no way. So that was our first body that was found out there.
And did you at the time know what happened to her, like cause of death before you went out on this other one?
I believe it was hypothermia.
Okay. Something happened to her to cause hypothermia.
The weather.
I know, but like I'm saying, if she had a heart attack or something, like you just don't fall on the side of a trail and then get hypothermia. Or was she just running outside late at night and then got hypothermia?
So we believe that she lived out there.
Okay, gotcha.
So you have like your cause of death and you have like your manner of death. And so like manner of death would have either been like natural, which I mean, technically it's not natural because it's not something that's like the body that's causing it. It'd be more like an accident due to like nature, right? So like weather conditions, and then like her cause of death would be due to hypothermia due to weather conditions. So manner of death, you only have like 6 different things that are like your manner of death. And then cause of death are things like gunshot wound or something like that, right? So like gunshot wound, manner of death could be like suicide or homicide, something like that. So in this case, it would be manner of death, like accident, and then cause of death would be hypothermia. And then due to like weather conditions, extreme weather conditions, because that is extreme cold. So, I mean, that's a point where like your fingers and like you are losing circulation, that kind of thing. So that's the first body that was found. That was not my case. And then later on that week, a body is found floating in the lake. That again was not my case. Anytime you have a body floating in the lake, that's kind of weird, especially during that time of year. Now, I will preface this way. I've had bodies in different bodies of water, whether it be a river or different lakes, which are usually during like the summer or something, which is normal, right? You have a lot of people that are swimming, or like after like an extreme storm, like a tornado or like flash flooding, where people just get dragged down into like a river or something and they're not able to get out of that. And so they just drown. In this case, so it's like, this is not normal. Someone would not be in this body of water fully clothed in this extreme cold weather. So obviously that's suspicious because you're thinking someone like dumped this body. And so you're going to work that as suspicious. And so that body came in as suspicious. And so originally, like when you would drop a body into water, the body is going to sink at first. And then it takes a couple days for a body to float because during the process of decomposition, a body will, start to expand due to the gases. And that's what actually causes a body to float.
I do have a question then. So I raised my hand. You guys can't see. I raise my hand. I have a question, teacher. Okay.
I mean, I am a teacher. So
when we are in a swimming pool, we don't naturally sink to the bottom. So what causes, if you're just like hanging out, right? So when you get in the water, you don't sink down to the very bottom of the water at first, right? So what's causing you then you said a body sinks?
Because your lungs are full of air.
Okay. And then once the air is gone, that's when you sink.
Right. Because you're not filling up your lungs with oxygen. So at this point, you're dead weight. You no longer are intaking that oxygen. So you're going to sink down.
I then assume like your body's being filled with water at the same time.
Yes, exactly. So then, you're intaking that water into your lungs. So it's literally just filling you up and it's just making you heavier.
Right. And so then as time goes on, then your body starts decomposing. That's when everything's like starting to leave your body and then you go to the top. Okay. Got it.
So your cavities are then filling up. So your lower intestines are going to be like the area where you start like decomposing the fastest because you have bacteria in those areas. And so bacteria is going to start breaking down your body the fastest. And so that's where you're going to start seeing that kind of green, purplish area start breaking down. And so lower intestines, bigger intestines, like where your colon is, that's where you're going to start seeing that color change. And then you're going to start seeing the gases expand. And then obviously your stomach. So anywhere where you're going to have that bacteria helps break things down. Then you see the gases expand. And so that's just going to work its way up through the whole digestive tract. And that's eventually going to work its way up. It's going to bubble through, make the stomach expand. And so it's basically going to make you like kind of like a flotation device kind of thing. So you'll float up to the surface. And so you look like your belly's distended when you come to the surface. You're basically unrecognizable at this point. There is this phenomenon that happens when people are submerged underwater. The skin becomes kind of waxy. I forget what it's called. There's a specific term. Term has left me, but it makes you soapy and it's waxy soap your skin turns into. So your whole surface of your skin turns like into this waxy soap. It's what happens when your body decomposes underwater, but you completely decompose. I mean, you become like this spongy being. I mean, you are completely unrecognizable. And especially whenever you're submerged in this icy water, you're frozen as well. So you're decomposing and then you're frozen into this like frozen, unrecognizable being. We kind of talked about that with like Mr. December. It's very hard to palpate any type of injuries when you're in this state because you're spongy as well. But then when you're frozen, it makes it even harder. So like I said, this guy...
Well, this is the second one now, right? So this is the second one of the week. First one was a woman.
The woman that was on land.
And then this is the first water one.
Correct. But she was not decomposed. She was a fresher body. Okay. There is something that's kind of... So when you have two bodies within a week, you're just kind of like, oh, that's kind of weird. So... yeah, this is our second person 1 week from the same area. Now, just within a couple more days, another body pops up. I'm on call. Same lake. Okay. Now, it seems like this is another person that seems about the same age as the other body that was in the lake that popped up.
And what is that? You said it was a male. And then how old were they?
They appear to be early 20s. It was hard to tell, but smaller frame. It was hard to tell because they were decomposing, but they were just smaller, had shorter, darker hair. So you just kind of go off of what features you can recognize. And so at this point now, we have one female and then we have now two males, which we're just trying to make that connection. Like, why would we have this female at this age and then these two males? So I get there and I come around to that side of the lake. It's like the back side of the lake. They had to block off the lake. So I pull up there and of course my transport pulls up. And like I had described earlier, it's just like you see the sheet of ice along the embankment of the lake. So it's not necessarily that the top of the lake or the surface of the lake is frozen over, because then you wouldn't see the body even coming up to the surface, right? But it's the ice along the embankment that's actually like pretty impressive, like how thick it is. So that's how cold it is, that there's this ice there. So fire has to come out so that they can actually get the body out of the lake for us, because we don't have those kinds of means to do that. And then our local law enforcement shows up, as well as CSI. And I felt so bad for the CSI. She's like the sweetest girl, and she's so tiny. And I could tell she was freezing. I was cold. And so I knew like she had to be even more cold than me. But I tried to go down and like take pictures. And so like I actually grabbed her camera to like take pictures too for her before they like pulled him up out of the embankment. And so I got pictures of him before they pull him up, because you're trying to get a position of him. Sometimes it does make a difference if they are face down or face up, because you're trying to get how much exposure they have to like the surface. It can change how much decomposition that they have based upon if they're face down or face up, just exposure to like the air or any type of animals. So wildlife kind of thing. So we pull him up. They actually have to like get this. It looks like a cage. It's hard to describe.
I'm picturing like the claw.
No, it's almost like this oversized half bird cage that's like it's open. It's like an open bird cage kind of thing. And that they can actually slide down to like the water edge. And then we put my body bag in it. And then they can just put the body within the body bag on this like bird cage looking thing. And they tie a rope to it. And that way they can just literally slide it up like the side of the embankment up to the top. So they're wearing like waders and stuff. I'm just like, oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, because I know if I was working in some tiny little town, it'd be me down in that water, and I'd be like, I hate this. So
it doesn't sound fun that's for sure.
No, and sometimes they have to use like this hook to kind of like grab onto clothing or something to try to like pull them in. I've seen them even use like the ladder on top of their truck to go out over the water to try to grab a hold of them. Yeah, so they have better means than like what we do. So they pull him up to the top of like the roadway there, because how this lake looks, if you were like in bird's eye view looking up over the lake, when you come into this lake, it has like this trail that just goes all the way around the lake. And we're on like the backside of this lake. So we're on the trail on the backside.
Is the lake actually then moving? Because I think I had pictured it as a body of water that moved through like this park, but it's just sitting stagnant then.
There is a portion of it that like goes off into kind of like this creek, but this is like the back part of the lake that is enclosed.
Okay. So it wasn't like the water was moving and you guys were having to go against the water and stuff.
No, not in this portion, because the body kind of almost floated back into this area, which is close to where the other body was found at. So I think these bodies just kind of drifted back into this area where they didn't really have anywhere else to go. So when I was looking at him, I couldn't, like I said, it was so hard to find any trauma on him just because he was in such bad shape as far as decomposition. And it was like the level of decomposition, like I couldn't even tell what his facial structure even looked like because it was so bad at this point. I know that he was wearing, like he had a shirt on, he had jeans on, and his shoes, I can't even remember if he had a jacket on, but no identifying features. Like he didn't have a wallet on him or anything, which was really frustrating because when we tried to do fingerprints on him, nothing came back. And you're just like, ugh, it's so hard when they're in that state of decomposition and you can't even get fingerprints to come back. So like we send fingerprints to our local state agency, and then we also try to send them to the FBI. And when nothing comes back, you're just like, ugh, what do we do now? Like, it's really hard to do because you just kind of randomly call around to local hospitals or doctors or dentists to see if they have anyone around there that's been missing with those names. So couldn't find any trauma on him. I was wearing 3 layers of gloves and my fingers were frozen. It was so hard to find anything on him. And he was wearing this shirt that was for like a local restaurant. I even tried to call them to see if they had an employee that hadn't shown up for work for a couple days to see if I could get a name. And they're like, no one. It's like, man, it was worth a try.
Yeah, no, that's actually really smart. Do you know at this point how long he had been in the water for? Like, you think he went in the water at the same time as the guy that they found earlier in the week?
Well, at this point, we were thinking, yeah, they were linked. So we were thinking, I mean, especially because it was only just a couple days apart. So we're just like, man, like we were all so frustrated because we didn't have a name for the other guy either. And it was kind of the same situation. We're like, okay. And we knew in this area that there was like a Guatemalan community. And so we were thinking they're from Guatemala and didn't have any record of them. And so like, okay, 2 days later, another body pops up in the lake. So then the police are like, oh my gosh, we have a serial killer.
That's what I'm thinking. And I'm also thinking I should have named this episode Bodies in the Lake, not Body. I didn't know there was multiple.
Well, yeah, I didn't tell you on purpose. So yeah, at this point, 3 bodies. We're like, okay, like this is crazy. Good thing that we did treat these all as suspicious. And of course, all of us investigators had our fair share pass round of working these scenes out at the lake. And we're like, we're over this.
Was this body a male also?
Yes.
Oh.
So we're like, okay, like trying to link these all together. And of course, you know, police are seeing, but they're like, the one woman, we're like, she's an outlier. She doesn't fit this profiling at all. So then they decide to send a scuba diver under.
No.
Yeah. I mean, why not? Because you have 3 bodies popping up. It's like, well, is there more down there? Have there been more? Because it's like, might as well just get them all at once now, right? Because there might be evidence down there. We don't know.
I just think that's such a scary job. Like, I was snorkeling in Thailand once and it was called Shark Bay. And they were dropping people a little bit further out. When the boats come in and you drop them, like there's muddy waters, right? So I was snorkeling when that was happening. And a shark came like just a foot or whatever in front of me. But the scariest part wasn't the shark. It's not being able to see anything in the water. So I'm picturing like this lake, not being able to see. It's cold. It's dark. It's like my worst nightmare.
Well, yeah, because a lot of times what they do, they just do it by feel if the water's too murky.
Oh, no. No.
They'll use like a flashlight, but yeah, when the water is like too murky.
Oh, gosh, you probably feel all kinds of stuff down there.
Yeah, actually, a CSI that I worked with, he was one of those people. And I know that he traveled a lot and did scuba diving. So I don't know if that's what you like to do, but...
Yeah, but it's different when you're looking at fish versus like searching for bodies.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Well, so they send this guy out, right, to look for anything else that could possibly be in this lake. And they end up finding a car.
Oh.
So they go back and they look on the road. And it turns out they do see there's some evidence that they had actually struck, I believe it was a tree, and they did see there were some skid marks. And they had gone into the lake. There was evidence that they weren't wearing their seatbelts.
Well, yeah, because that's why they're getting out of the car. So the windows probably like at this point either were down or busted, right?
I'm not sure. I didn't see anything about that.
That would explain why maybe they were wearing jackets or not wearing jackets.
Mm-hmm. So they asked people from around there if they recognized the car. They said, oh, yeah. We saw these kids the other day. Apparently they were like high school kids, like teenagers. Had just seen them like the week prior or something. And they were like last seen eating at like a taco truck or something. And yeah, they were like Guatemalan, but had like no record of them like here. So hadn't been seen since. Just had an accident, went into the lake, hadn't been seen since. Just so happened to pop up at different times. And the woman had nothing to do with it.
Oh my gosh, that's so crazy. It's so crazy that it could be, you can go from thinking it's a serial killer to just a car accident and it taking a diver to go down there. Because you probably wouldn't have found the car.
Right. Well, it would never pop up. The car's not going to pop up, but the bodies will. So you're just going to keep thinking like, oh, well, when's the next one going to pop up? Because like they had to actually bring out like the fire department to like haul the car like out. So, I mean, like what, you have to open up the trunk or something to see if there's more bodies in there. I mean, you never know. It's better to be safe than sorry. And like when those kinds of bodies come in that are floating, like I said, I mean, you will always collect evidence on those because just in case, I mean, when you have that many bodies, you have to. So the circumstances and...
I mean, I don't mean good, like that's good what happened to them, but that was a good story.
I gotcha.
That was totally got me. Yeah. Well, obviously, because my brain is now going to our next episode is the Green River Killer. So I'm like, oh, you're prepping us for that.
See, I told you I had some good ones.
Yeah, that's good. Speaking of Green River Killer, again, if you guys have any questions for Amy about that, please send them in. Probably at this point, when you hear this episode, we'll have already recorded that episode. But just in case we miss anything, let us know, and then we can kind of go from there. Thank you for sharing this. This was almost a treat. It was spooky, but like...
I have so many cases. I forget about what I have, and I'm going through, and I was like, ooh, I can make this a real suspense case. Like, I'll just draw it out and I'll really make you guys like, hang on there. Oh man, that was like one of the coldest days ever, like that I can remember being here. But like, I can remember my fingers like being like stiff. And I was like, I can't bend them. I went to the truck. I was like holding them up to the vents and I was like, please defrost. Like I was, oh my gosh. So it's just so weird when you are trying to feel a body and the body's like frozen through. Like you put them in the coolers, right? And then you forget when you put them in the coolers and you're trying to get ready for an autopsy and you're like, oh crap, they're still frozen through because you pulled them out of the body of water frozen and they've been in this cooler. Well, buddy, I guess you're sitting in the morgue for a little bit until you thaw out. We've had cases before not being frozen, but this is like when I was still working as like a, what we call like a morgue attendant, when I just like checked people in and like searched bodies and stuff. I remember pulling a body onto a table and this guy had drowned in a lake and this was like a summer case. We were getting all this water out of his body and there was tadpoles in his stomach and they were still alive.
What?
Yeah. Big tadpoles, like as big as mice. It's crazy. Yeah. I was like, wow, I never thought I'd see that. It was kind of cool. I was like, circle of life. It's a habitat.
Yeah. Well, I guess bugs live. I mean, now we're getting off topic, but real fast. Do bugs live in bodies after they're dead?
Oh, absolutely. Like I've told you, flies, they put their eggs in open orifices.
Oh, I haven't heard that word in a long time.
Yeah, and they lay their eggs in the easiest opening.
Right. So then do you have bugs just flying all over the morgue?
A lot of times, no, because it's kept clean. It's really, really clean. It's sterile. So a lot of times they'll use up that bag real fast after you search the bodies. Because, I mean, they're all over some of those bodies that are really badly decomposed. It's how the bodies decompose, though. It's circle of life.
I'm going to look up the word, the waxy term that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's my gosh, that bothers me so bad. It's like when you don't use it, you lose it.
Well, we'll look it up because I'm interested in that. I didn't know that your body turns waxy when it's underwater.
Yeah, there's a lot of really weird things that happen to your body when you die. Like there's this, well, we'll talk about it another time.
Thanks, guys, for listening.
Save it for another day.
If you have any questions, you can email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com. You can message us on Instagram. Please continue to like and subscribe. And thanks to those that have already. We appreciate you.
My estudiantes.
Yes, thank you. Until next time.